Welcome back to another episode of Impossible Equals Impossible, a live show created to share the entire story because I think so many times on social media you meet people and you see the highlight reel, right? And why I'm super duper excited tonight is I'm bringing to you an absolute legend, probably one of the most intellectual people that I've met when it comes to business and just the way that he explains it, but also the this incredible journey of life that he's been on. And we actually met like a couple months ago, and I like to say that it was probably the biggest gift of my mastermind retreat to Cancun. We both had some epic stories getting there, and yeah, I always love bringing incredible people to my network because there's a lot of people on the internet who say that they do things, but then there's a whole different level of people who've actually not only done it, but they've repeated it and they have the lifestyle to actually prove it. And with no further ado, my guest tonight is a dear friend, and I would consider him a mentor, Jason Sisneros. Jason is a battle tested chairman obsessed with the game of business. His focus is consistently and predictably building 5% companies and 1% business owners. Renowned as one of the most brightest minds in business and innovation, Jason has worked with Fortune 500 companies like Nike, Comcast, and Microsoft. His passion, however, is for the over 100 small to mid cap companies he has helped optimize for maximum cash flow or wealth harvesting exits. Jason is sought after by business owners worldwide as a trusted resource for creating competitive advantages for their companies. His proprietary systems are called Built to Exit or B2X. He currently owns multiple businesses, has personally exited more than 2 dozen companies, and has spoken to hundreds of thousands of business owners on stages and podcasts around the world. Jason's commitment extends beyond business. He volunteers as an undercover operative and helps fund a child sex trafficking rescue unit called CERT Ministries, actively involved in anti-domestic violence and food insecurity initiatives. Jason believes ethical capitalism improves the world. He champions that successful business owners are among the most generous, driving positive change globally. He considers a well trained, robust, small and mid sized enterprise environment where we all do business with each other one of the most potent engines of freedom. And with no further ado, I bring to you my dear friend, Jason Sisneros.
What's up, my brother?
Jason, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited for this conversation because I think so many times, right? We read that bio. We talked about um, just kind of the insight and the value that you bring to people. Where I kind of want to start tonight is you have such a fascinating life story. I think like pretty much everything you've kind of either been there, done that, or you've experienced it. And tell us about who is Jason Cisneros, and like everybody sees on the outside where you're at now, but it wasn't always that way. Tell us a little bit of how some of the challenges and impossible things that you've had to overcome to get to where you are.
Well, first, thank you for having me on your show. I'm honored to be here. You have one of those qualities, and it's one of the quality that is hard to describe. Right? You have this look about you, and it's inquisitive. And I think that from the people that I've know that follow you and that watch your shows and whatnot, there's just always like that head cock, right? It's like it's there. There's a way there. You people that behave like that are inquisitive and curious and can see through bullshit. I don't know if I can cuss on your show or not, but but it's a great quality to have. And so I'm glad to be here. Glad to have this conversation. And my story is readily available for anybody that really cares. What I will tell everybody that's watching is that we all have a story. Everybody that's watching your show, we all have things that we've had to deal with that have made it seemingly difficult, right? There is no such thing as a lifetime that is spent in ease, right? You either look at yourself like the victim, or you figure out this journey is going to be rough, and so I got to get rougher than it. Right. And so I think that's what we have in common, and I think that I'll have in common with everybody that's watching your show is that I did, my particular story in a very short version was I was adopted when I was very young. My adopted father was not a good man. He beat my mom. I stepped in front of him when I was very young to start taking her beatings, broke my nose a couple dozen times, between the time that I was 6 and when he went to prison for attempted murder of me and my mom when I was 17. Along the way, the things that I learned how to do were deal drugs, fight, and be angry. Those were my assets that I got from him. Best asset was, and I think that this is where your audience and I can really connect, which is the biggest lessons in life are sometimes people and situations who show us what we don't want and who we don't want to become. And I think that was the greatest gift of my adopted father, was that he showed me exactly what kind of a man I didn't want to be. The abuse and getting locked in my room till my face would heal drove me into really reading the Bible cover to cover, not really as a religious tome, but like as a series of stories that taught me to really love language. It put me in touch with a fourth grade teacher named Mrs. Ivy, who taught me to love the written word, and that I could transport myself anywhere, wherever I was, I could transport myself out through story, both other people's story and writing my own. And so I'm really grateful for the way that I was raised. I'm really grateful that I went through what I went through, because I see weakness, a lot of weakness, right? If you're a business owner or you're watching this and you're looking for advice, I think that we live in the greatest time for opportunity, because people are, instead of looking to overcome their weaknesses, they're looking to blame it on someone else and for somebody else to come rescue them. And when you're competing in a world like that, if you take any personal responsibility whatsoever, you're going to have the advantage. And so that's what I've learned. That's kind of my background and where I came from. Very interesting. I've been stabbed in the chest. I spent time in jail because I broke the law, and as a younger man, and have obviously turned that around.
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You're freezing just a little bit. I think you were so enthralled with my story that it just kind of just froze you in time.
Yeah, you said something that like really resonated with me, and it was this idea that most people that you encounter in life are going to teach you kind of what not to do instead of what to do. And I think for me as well, like just looking at both of my parents, I see so much of that, and I've been so grateful because it really is invaluable. And I look at a lot of the experiences and people that I've gotten to meet, and I definitely don't think that that would have happened had I had, say, a quote unquote normal upbringing. So I really resonated with that. What's what's so fascinating to me is I love the way that you're so transparent, but you're not. When I was younger, I was definitely like a blunt person. Like I didn't really care about people's feelings. I feel like you really do navigate this harmony between being honest with people, but coming from a place of love. And I think that there's so many people when it comes to business that they fall into kind of one of two extremes. It's either like they're like all about their business and they're so strict, they're so rigid, they're like hard on themselves, or it's the opposite side where it's like, oh, well, I didn't do it, I'll do it tomorrow. They kind of give themselves like too much grace and are too lenient. I'm really curious for you, what how did you develop this empathy but also like this incredible business acumen, when it seems like from a lot of your childhood and your experiences, like you didn't from a young age say like, oh, I'm gonna be like a business person, right? Like that wasn't kind of what you
I
wanted
had
to
no
do.
idea that there was even such a thing when I
Yeah,
was young.
I'm curious, like how do you have either like a tip for people who are maybe like wanting to get to that point, like maybe whether it's incorporate more empathy or to be more like, who are some of the people that you've gotten to kind of learn from?
That's a great question that I'm not 100% sure I've ever been asked before. So great job. But it's a very relevant question because, like you, when I was younger, I was an angry person. I was mad at the world. I was mad at law enforcement. I mean, Malcolm X used to be my hero. Like, I hated everybody. I hated everything because I felt like it was them taking it away from me, right? That's how I felt when I was a kid. It was like somebody gave me this dad, right? That hates me. Somebody gave me this crap situation. Um, and and really, I think, empathy, there's a couple of things, and I'm glad you asked me the question. I'm really thinking through the right, the how I feel about that word empathy. Because I truly, in all my heart, you said the key word, which is love, but I truly, in all my heart, believe in the last 20 years of my life that I have a real solid belief that there is absolutely no reason, no purpose, there is no scenario. And I rescue kids from the sex trade. There is no reason to damage another human being with your words. There's no reason for it. That's my belief, right? And that's after years of verbal abuse from my adopted father and being an angry person and saying hurtful things and those type of things. And because at the end of the day, everybody's doing the best they can with what they have, no matter what position they are in life, right? Now it doesn't mean that I'm not going to put on a bulletproof vest and do whatever damage I have to do to protect the vulnerable and the innocent. Doesn't mean that I won't do those things, but it comes from that love, right? That's where it comes from. And so when in business, those conversations are, you can't, anytime you write off an employee as a terrible employee, they might be a terrible employee, but anytime you write them off as a terrible employee, that's one thing. But if you write them off as a terrible person, that's another thing, right? That one is their responsibility. The other one is mine. When you write a friend off or a customer or a client, right? It's a business is built to fall in love with the outcome of someone else. And so if they are not demonstrating what it's like to express love and gratitude and appreciation, there might be something wrong with my product and or service, not with the person receiving it. And again, all of this is just to say that the greatest challenge that I have in life is the person who stares me in the mirror.
Mm,
And until I make that person perfect, I have lost the ability to judge. Right? It doesn't mean that I don't have discernment. It doesn't mean that I won't part ways with people, but it does mean to me that there's absolutely no reason to verbally try to destroy someone because of a disagreement. And so I know that I needed love. The only reason I am where I am is because people gave me a second chance, a third chance, 177th chance, right? And that they could love through that outer skin that I had that was just the outer skin of somebody who needed to develop a leather skin for the immediate dangers that I had in my life at that time. Right? They don't exist now, so what you get primarily, unless you steal from me, lie from me, or try to hurt the vulnerable, what you get from me is a big teddy bear.
yeah, no, like that's 100%. And I experienced that in Cancun. We had so many great conversations, and you said something in that segment that really stood out to me, and you said it at the retreat as well when you were speaking. It's this idea of like be the only, right? And falling in love with your customer's outcome more than anything else. I'm really curious because like for a lot of people who are maybe either like just starting or they're at the beginning of their journey, maybe they've been in it a couple years or so, what would you really share with them on maybe like two or three actionable tips that can help them kind of get to that point? Because I know for me personally, detaching from the expectations or like what I gain from the interactions that I have with people has been so freeing for me. And just being able to like be present in that experience has just led to so much more deeper conversations and connections. And I'm curious for you, like you've obviously been doing this a long time, but like taking your experience and kind of everything that you've learned, what like two or three actionable tips could you share that would help people fall in love with their client's outcome?
Well, very, very first, right? Again, one of I've rescued with a lot of different teams, and the one that I happen to be with right now is CERT Ministries, right? And the person who started that organization was Pastor Rudy Gonzalez, and I've been rescuing kids with them all over in the darkest places of the world for the last 5 years. And he said something to me on one of those rescues that blew my mind. And I love things when I hear something that bothers me so much that I can't sleep for a couple nights because I'm a sound sleeper, you know. But when something bothers me, he said to me, he said, look, a slave cannot free another slave, right? And this I struggled with what he said until I finally understood. There's so many different layers of slavery, and the biggest layer of slavery that we have is the one of us enslaving ourselves, right? And through what other people think, how we were raised, um, any sort of victimhood that makes us feel like the outside world owes us something, or that the solution is anywhere outside of us besides ourselves, or that there's an obstacle outside of ourselves, right? None of that is true. Um, and and uh, and the victimhood that we get taught to absorb, because I will tell you, children that have been abducted and are being traded in the sex trade, they're victims. They're real victims because they've had choice ripped away from them, and they need somebody to intervene on their behalf. Domestic violence, the women, that was my first love when I very first started making enough money to be able to give back to stuff, because my mom went through it, her and I, and in our own home. But a woman every 11 minutes is brutalized in her own home as a prisoner, and people are like, well, they can leave. I don't even want to have that conversation. It's a prisoner situation. Their choices have been severely limited, if not taken away completely. Somebody's starving to death when there's enough food in the world, right? Every 4 seconds, somebody dies of starvation. These types of things, there's real victims out there in the world. And what they need is for people who may have been victimized, because I know that people have, right? Me, a lot of people that are watching, but I'm not being victimized in this moment. And when I'm not being victimized in this moment, that means that I have survived something that gave me a strength that I didn't have prior, that I do now, that I'm honor bound by God or Jesus or whatever, whoever you believe in. I'm a Christian, but that I'm honor bound to use that strength in the defense of the vulnerable. Right. And so when you asked about actionable advice, I have to give some depth here, right? Because there's so many cookie cutter answers that anybody can give. I'm not about cookie cutter. I like deeper answers. They have to be thought through. And so I say all of that to say that true joy is only experienced in service of other people, right? You can't jump into a bottle. Everybody's tried it. You can't jump into bed. You can't jump into drugs. You can for to temporarily escape, but you're not solving the actual problem, right? And so the only way for us to do that, to be able to get to that other side, is for us to realize that we are the only tool that we have. Right now, once you understand that, you can't blame, you take away blame, which is a worthless, completely worthless emotion. And you sit down and you say, okay, I have this tool called business. And you know that I am a huge advocate for the business community, especially small and mid-sized companies. And for those of you that are out there, we're called SMEs, SME, small and mid-sized enterprises. I believe that the greatest freedom in the world was created by us, by ethical capitalism. I'm not talking about Amazon. I'm not talking about our corrupt centralized government. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about, there's 33 million of us in the United States, and that have 0 employees to 499. And in that 0 to 499, that 33 million group of people are people who cannot be racist, who cannot, maybe in the privacy of their own home, maybe they're misogynistic, maybe they're, whatever. You can't be homophobic. You can't be any of those things in a ethical capitalistic society. Because if somebody displays racism, I'm not doing business with them. Nobody else is going to do business with them, right? They're going to have a bad reputation. And that's all you have in business. When you don't have lobbyists and millions of dollars, and don't have a mother, an aunt, a cousin that's sitting in Congress, right, that can inside trade and get some money for nothing. We have to earn every damn dollar in our community. Okay. So I lay those two things down. Number one, I know everybody that's a business owner is in love with they want to add value. They want to ease suffering somewhere in the world with some kind of charity. Animals, veterans, sex trade, starving people. There's all kinds of things that need our help, right? And so in that place, that you have to make more money than you are making now. You have to have excess capital. Now you go, how am I going to create that excess capital? What's the greatest engine for literally anybody? A guy like me, a nobody from nowhere, right? No family name, no family upbringing, didn't graduate from high school, that just said, oh, there's this thing that exists called business, and you can try it. And it's going to take you facing you in the mirror and overcoming all of your weaknesses. I'm talking to myself right now, all of my weaknesses, all of my prejudices, how I thought about money, my mommy issues, my daddy issues, all that other kind of stuff, to be able to understand this intellectual sport called business, that have rules and they have guidelines, and they leave pebbles and clues in books and all the different people that are out there. So as I did that, that's what I did to free myself, right? I learned my first 3 businesses, bankrupt, right? Bam, bam, bam. It was like dominoes, and not in a good way. It was my entire, what I thought I was, who I thought I was becoming, the house gone, the marriage gone, all of that stuff gone, my mind basically gone, my will to live gone. And this was the business situation. So I want to say all of this before I give 3 actionable tips to let you know that these are not going to be things that I'm going to tell you lightly. These are not going to be things that I haven't spent 30 plus years getting my ass handed to me in the world of business, making mistakes, and then learning how to overcome them. These 3 pieces of advice are not from somebody else's book. They're not from a seminar. They're not from, some bullshitty, 7 steps to success. These are what I did. And what if I was to go back and tell me what to do in the early days, these are 3 things that I would say. Number 1, you have to have an end game. Step number 1, understand that business is an intellectual sport, then you're learning to play it. Okay. Step number 1, before you step in the arena, you need to determine what the outcome is. Why are you doing this? Why are you about to play a game, an intellectual sport that 95% of people fail at. Right? Everybody asks me all the time, Jason, what do you do? I build 5% businesses and 1% business owners, because only 5% succeed long-term. Less than 1% of those business owners are ever able to harvest the wealth to be able to go on and do the things that they want to do, to be able to gain true freedom. Right? And so if you start today and you say, what is my outcome? And I'm going to shortcut the story for everybody. It's freedom. You're looking for ultimate choice ability for your own life. And then the outcome of that is 8 billion. I can't give you some pat answer. I don't know. People that are listening tonight, every single one of you have a different idea of what freedom means to you. Okay. So first things first, know and understand you're playing this game to create freedom for yourself. It clears away a lot of mud. It clears away buying programs from people. It pushes away making decisions emotionally and then justifying them, logically. It pushes away all of the hope dealers that are out there. And it says, I have one outcome, and that outcome for me is freedom. Now, second step, once you understand that, I guess the first step would be to say, what does that freedom cost you? And I want to let that sink in for just a second, because there's a number. So many people, everybody wants to keep us divided on racial lines and all this other crap, right? It's literally just puppets, Republican and Democrat stuff, like all of this stuff, when it's not that. It is economic in nature. And the people pulling the strings want to keep their economic advantage by shutting down the very machine that is created to be creative destruction for a reason. There's reasons why Kmart went out of, or not Kmart, but what's the Kodak, right? There's a reason why Kodak went out of business. It's because of that's what companies are supposed to grow. Somebody's supposed to come up, and then they're supposed to go out of business. That is creative destruction. When government and big business steps in and interrupts that, it bastardizes what we're doing. Okay. So I hear a little bit of feedback coming from somewhere. I'm not sure if that's there. It's gone. So the idea here is that we're playing a bigger game. Okay. And the idea for us as business owners is it's on us. Everybody can talk about the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Constitution. By the way, if you study the Constitution, you'll come out with the idea, right? Kmart did go out of business too. I thank you for reminding me of that. But the Constitution, all the way through it, is an anti-consolidation document. It's an anti-consolidation document, which means that it is to keep the wealth and power from consolidating in the pockets of too few, right? That's why it's there. The small business community, us 33 million, we do 60% of the GDP. Out of a 25 to 27 trillion dollar economy, we do 17 to 18 trillion. There is no business bigger than the small business community. We are not non-essential. Nobody should have gotten away with calling us non-essential, right? We do 60% of the hiring, but it's decentralized, which is a problem to people who want to consolidate wealth and power. We are a problem. That's why I tell everybody, do business with your compatriots. Do business with other small businesses. Do business with other medium-sized businesses. Find people online. If you got to get it online, find smaller e-commerce people, and stop giving your money to people like Amazon, who want nothing more than to replace everybody that they've got working for them with robots. Okay. So anyway, coming back to the 3 points, it's understanding, right? You have to understand the game you're playing. And these are some of the rules, right? If you play football, which I have, I did most of my life, I understand the rules really well, which means that if I stay within those rules, condition my body, and execute within those rules, I can be very successful. Now you put me in a game of cricket, I'm going to fail miserably because I can't even understand the first thing about how to play cricket. Don't understand it. Most people don't understand the game that they're playing called business, right? There are rules, there is an infrastructure, there are things that you can do to learn. So first things first. Number one, it's about freedom. Number two, what does your freedom cost? Here's how you figure it out. You take a piece of paper, you turn off all the TV, you turn off social media, and you take 15 effing minutes for yourself to sit down and go, what is freedom for me? I want a house that's paid off. Okay, how much is that? That's $250,000. Okay, great. I need a couple of cars paid off. Okay, cool. How much is that? That's $100,000. Okay. I need to have, about $100,000 coming in off of, passive income. Okay, cool. That means I got to have $1 million in an account somewhere, spinning off 10% interest. Okay, cool. I got to put my kids through college. That's another, $200,000, let's say. All right. So I add all of this up and I go $1 million, 2, 3, 4. I got $1.5 million that is going to get me my first level of freedom. And I say first level because there's many levels beyond that. But that 1.5 million becomes the target. It becomes the target by which you set your North Star, by which you set your travels, by which you set your thinking, by which you set your intake of content, by which you set your education, by which you set your workouts, right? All of that stuff becomes 1.5 million is my freedom number. And anybody in my way, anything that's good, or people that can come along and help me accelerate. Now I'm playing the game with the destination in mind, right? I can't remember which side. So right above me, right here, there's a trophy. Okay, right. I don't know if you can see my pen, but I'm pointing at a trophy. There's a trophy on my thing right back here. Okay, that one. And that was Tony Robbins' Business Mastery in London. It was advanced business mastery. And I went, and they have 5, 6, 7, 8,000 people, all business owners that are there to learn about business. And they play this game. You form a team, 5 to 10 people, right? Somebody's the CEO, and you compete against everybody else in the building. And somebody asked me, "Hey, do you want to play?" And I'm like, "Not really." And they're like, "Jason, you always, you're talking about systems and processes, and this is an opportunity for you to display that your shit actually works." I said, "Well, I know it does because I got my bank accounts, I could show you, but let's talk about for all of these people, right?" And so all I did was for 5 days play the game the way that I have structured it out with Anton J, with Built to Exit, with all of the businesses that I've done, and my team won with me as CEO, right? So there's a way, and I don't say that to brag because nobody cares about me. What I say is that whoever's watching this, if you're already playing the game of business, all you got to do is tweak a few things, right? You got to just tweak a few things. You just got to, and knowing and understanding that that's your outcome clears the muddy water for you to play this game, right? And so you go $1.5 million. I'm not stopping. I'm going to do this. I'm going to put my money. I'm not getting a new car. I'm not trying to impress anybody on Instagram where nobody is going to be my customer anyway, right? Where they don't believe anybody and they're all just trying to get attention. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to find out. I want to get referrals. I'm going to make money through whatever it is I do, right? It just lines up the great thinking that if you own a business already, you already have an intelligent mind. You already have the guts that it takes to play the game that you're playing. All I'm saying is don't set things against you that don't need to be. So that's number one. I call it your end game, which is the name of my next book, right? That's coming out this fall. But I call it your end game. Know what your end game is, and that is freedom, and then know how much that freedom costs. And then align everything for that. Tip number 2, we already kind of talked about it, which is make sure that you have fallen in love with the outcome of your client. And if you haven't, here's how you know that your customer, when they're done with your product and or service, will give you a 10 out of 10. Okay. They'll say met it all. because so many people are in business for selfish reasons. I know, I understand, I get it. There's no shame in for the fact that go, Jason, I got to sell to whoever will buy my crap, or else I'm out of my apartment, or I'm out of my house, or I'm not going to be able to feed my kids, or I'm not. No judgment. And I understand. Keep doing that, but just tweak your business so that it becomes something that's longer than a 30-day stress pattern, right? A 30-day cash flow pattern. So falling in love with the outcome of your client means, again, shutting everything off, sitting down with a piece of paper and going, if I was to fall perfectly in love with the outcome of my client, what would they experience? What would my product and or service do? How would they know that they're experiencing at that high level? How would I get them to tell me that they experience at that high level? How would I get them to tell me that they didn't experience at that level and what I could have improved to be able to take it to that next level, right? Then at the ultimate goal, okay? Doesn't matter what you do. Number 3, okay? Number 3, let's talk about if you have employees, it's 2 and 2A, fall in love with the outcome of your client and also fall in love with the outcome of your employees. It will change your culture, okay? It will change your culture. I'm not saying let them take advantage of you. I'm not saying hire a bunch of these whiny baby boo-boos who think that the world owes them something on a silver platter. I'm not saying that. There are great human beings that want to be part of what you're doing. And if you fall in love with their outcome, they will help you achieve yours, right? That's Zig Ziglar 101. Help enough people get what they want, and you will definitely end up getting what you want. Okay. But stepping back into falling in love with somebody else's outcome, and then on in your own world, right? In your own business, you knock away. I've got like 6 things. You got me on like this tear right now, and I have like 6 things that I want to go through. Okay. End game. Fall in love with your client's outcome, fall in love with your employee's outcome. And there's like 6 that I want to give you.
Do it.
Yeah, I just want to figure out, why don't I shut up for a second and let you ask me a question? I'll come back to this.
It's interesting because you said a lot there that really kind of like resonated with me. I think one of the things that you said in the beginning about how a slave can't free another slave, and I know for like some people that language is like really tough to hear, especially with yesterday being Juneteenth, but when we think about it in the context, right? Like a lot of in many ways, not much has really changed. You have a lot of people working 40 years to maybe enjoy like 20, 15 years, or it's like all these things that people plan and they live so conditionally. And once that condition is met, whether it's their health, whether it's finances, like all these things that nobody's like thinking about, and the thing that they wanted to do their entire life, it just doesn't become possible. So that was number 1. But then the second thing that you said, and it really made me think, is like I've been investing with a lot of these like, mentors and top people for the past like 2 or 3 years. And one of the things that I always noticed is that they would always talk about, everybody would say like, oh, do you want to be a millionaire? And the thing that I noticed when I was in my finance career is that, well, if you think about it, everybody's going to become a millionaire, but the real question becomes, how much of it do you actually get to keep, right? And a big part of that is because people invest so much of their time and their money making other people rich, right? It's like Louis Vuitton has their billions. They don't need you to go buy their stuff and all these type of things. So that really stood out to me because I no longer buy anything from Amazon. For a long time, when I became an entrepreneur, it became more important to me than ever to support other entrepreneurs and other business owners, because it's like you said, right? We're already like rebels essentially, right? Against like what the quote unquote traditional path is. And for a lot of people, they face enough flack and doubt from a lot of the people like closest to them in life, whether it's family, friends, right? And I'm curious on your thoughts, Jason, but this is always something that I always thought about for me, because growing up as a kid, I was told like, "Oh, like don't talk to strangers, stay away." But as you become older as an entrepreneur, because my mom, we were having a conversation and she said, "What is like one thing that you would have told me to do differently?" And my first answer was, "I wish that you encouraged me to talk to strangers, because strangers have everything that I want. They're going to be my clients. They're going to be my advocates." Right. And I think that's just such a powerful shift that so many people need to kind of flip, is that they're so afraid to talk to people that they don't know. "Oh, I don't know this person." But it's like, there was something that I heard in a training that I was in today, about how once you run out of families, friends, and fools, you're going to be in a boatload of trouble. And I think that's a position that so many people find themselves getting to much quicker than they thought, because things are changing. And I just love everything that you said. I want to go to this incredible story that you told. I actually think this is probably like one of the biggest takeaways that I had from the retreat in Cancun. But you told this incredible story about you and your son were like building like Legos, and how like that really flipped a massive switch for you. And I would love for you to share that story.
Yeah, it was a game changer for me. And what we're talking about here, there's certain things that I think people should write down, right? Not because I care about, oh, Jason said this. It's because these are the things that I've written down that were game changers for me, right? And this is one of them, is that business should be a machine that creates cash. You know what's not in there? It's not, I'm gonna cure cancer. I'm gonna save the world. I'm gonna be inclusive. I'm gonna do. It's a machine that creates cash. Now, what do you do with the cash? That's your level of freedom. You've earned it. It's there. Now, what can you do with it? You can do any of those things. If you want to fight for gender equality, you want to fight for racial issues, you want to fight for anything that you want to fight for. It gives you the tools to be able to do that. But if the machine is infected with it, then it will not act like a machine, right? It will not act like a machine. And so, going back to what you said, this example with my son, and I get a lot. I just want to cover this to understand. Everybody's like, "Oh, it's just one of those. You're one of those automatons for business." You know what? I act in love with what I build machines so that, right? So that I know that it costs somewhere around $3,400 to rescue a child. I know that it costs around $160,000 for a woman and her 3 children to be able to get out of where they're going and to be able to get on her feet and to be able to get producing for herself. Right. I know that it costs less than $1 to feed somebody who's starving. Like, I know my numbers. And so I know that if I have a machine that's creating cash, I know where that cash is going. I don't need more cars. I don't need no more houses. And I don't hold it against people that do want lots of houses and lots of cars. You will find them empty most of the time, both spiritually and physically, because you can only drive one car at a time. That's just my journey. I don't judge anybody. But when you come back to this idea of building a machine, and that's your business, the greatest example of that was my son. Is like, my nickname in business is actually the architect, but my son actually has an architectural mind, and he's a builder. He's been a builder since he could move, basically. So we took him to go see, this is when he was, gosh, he was like 7 years old, I think. I can't remember, 7, 8 years old. But we took him to see the movie, the Lego movie. And what a genius marketing plan that was. So then we go to the Lego store, we get this thing, and it's Blackbeard's boat, or Blackbeard's ship. And this thing has got 7,722,562 pieces, right? My nightmare. We start building this thing, and that's an over exaggeration. It's probably got 4,000 pieces, which is still a nightmare. So we go about building this thing. We get to, you know, like, I don't know, it was midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. This thing is wonky. It's like falling apart. And I'm about ready to smash it up against the wall. But I think to myself, I got to have, you know, this is going to be a teaching moment no matter what I do. If I smash it against the wall, it's going to teach my son not to have patience. And if I don't, it's going to teach him how to work through these things. So we took it. I looked at him. I said, look, we know the picture. What we have to do is reverse engineer to where it's broken and start over from that place. And that's all a lot of businesses are, right? So we went back, we broke it down because you have the picture on the box, you have the written instructions, and then you have the pieces. And we did it. And then, you know, around about sunset, we got it done. And I high-fived my son and I go, that was one of the greatest business lessons I've ever had. He goes, I know, Dad, we're master builders. High-fived me again. And I thought to myself, yeah, that's why my systems and my processes and my book is called Built to Exit. My next book is called Built to Exit, Your Ultimate Endgame, right? And so because you have to build, and a lot of people that have their business in their hands right now, it's just wonky because you did what I did, what most of us do. We get into business and we start making sales, and then we start to duct tape solutions around it. When there is an actual box, which the painting on the box is what we talked about earlier. That's your end game. That's however much money you need that machine to create, to solve problems, to start a charity, to sail the 7 seas, to do whatever it is that your version of freedom is. That's your picture on the box. Now you go in and there's systems and processes, right? And assets. Assets produce cash, a specific kind of cash called free cash flow. Profit is an illusion. Operating cash flow has to go back into the business. Free cash flow is the money you can take off and build your freedom fund with. And it doesn't affect the growth. It doesn't affect the business. It doesn't affect any of that. Free cash flow, right? And an asset, you have to have about 40 of them built so somebody can buy your company from you and not need you there. But if you focus on the core 4, right, which I'll give you right now, the core 4, and an asset, by the way, is people, process, technology, and measurement. Those are the 4 things that make up an asset written down that somebody can pick up or on your computer, how, you know, whatever age you happen to be. I still have 3-ring binders full of stuff behind me. So, that'll tell you a little bit about my age. But you write those things down so that anybody could pick it up in the position that they are, pick it up and know exactly where to get that information in from, the job to do, and then where to hand that off to. Just like a Lego piece, right? That job, whatever it is, it's not the person, it's the outcome. I'm going to take it from somebody else, right? I'm going to do my job. I'm going to pass it off to somebody else. That is an asset. Okay. Now you get those 4 assets, the core 4 assets that you need to have: sales / marketing. Okay. That's number 1. Not what we usually fix when Anton J, my company, goes into fix things, ANTONJAE.com. But the sales is number 1, operations, which is just keeping the promise that sales made, finance, which is the language that your business speaks, and training, which is the duplicative nature of being able to fall in love with the outcome of your client and have it go through the machine and create the same predictable outcome for every customer, every client that comes along in whatever small amount of customers you have, medium, or lots of customers, that they all get the same experience because you fell in love with their outcome. Not one customer's outcome, all of them. Not just white ones, not just black ones, not just Asian ones, not just gay ones, not just women, not all of them are going to experience the same thing because you selflessly fell in love with the outcome of another human being and put your garbage to the side. And you realize, what was my favorite saying from Cancun? Remember what my hashtag
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Honestly, like, no matter what, You can whine about it. You can think that there's advocacy groups. You can think about all these stuff. Nobody cares because they're dealing with their own stuff. Now, that doesn't mean, and I know I have to fight this battle too all the time, it doesn't mean that people don't care. I care deeply. You care deeply. We love deeply. There are people who love me back deeply. But at the end of the day, 90% of what drives us as human beings is what everybody else might say about us, the dirt they have on us from the back, whatever it is. And whatever, if the worst thing about you came out, it's over. It's over. Nobody cares. Right. So just stop letting it weigh you down.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I said a lot there. So did that
No,
answer the question?
no, yeah, it was incredible. And I think just the way that you described asset, for me, I was like, oh yeah, this is how this is somebody that you want to train with. Because here I am thinking like, oh, an asset is just something to like help provide like value and to help somebody advance. And I was like, I guess that's a very generic version of an asset, whereas yours is more detailed. You and I really gelled because I'm a very like deep person as well. I like having a lot of conversations with depth because I feel like so many people do things on the surface, right? There's a lot of these like gurus out there, people that just regurgitate a lot of these like personal development books. And I always used to laugh because a lot of these coaches are actually like, they're charging you money to go pay the mentors that like I'm training with, right? And it's like they're just teaching you a lot of the same stuff that people can get access to for free. So I thought that was really powerful. I'm really curious for you. This is like my favorite question I love asking people because it tells me so much, not only about them, but really like how they've kind of lived their life in the direction that they're going. Personal development's been an absolute game changer for you. You've gotten to speak all over the world, train with all these incredible people. You've had such a vast life experiences. I'm curious for you, Jason, who has been the most impactful person in your life, and what was the most valuable lesson that they've taught you?
Yeah, it's a tie between my grandma and my mom. It's for different reasons. Like my mom loved me through and protected, and did what she could. That is again, I have a leaning towards the, or a passion for um women in this world. And I don't want that, I don't want it to sound weird, but I feel like they exemplify a lot of really great assets, and things like, for instance, most women, not all, there's always exceptions, but most women don't even, they may like think about quitting for like 15 seconds, right? But it's not really an option on the table ever. Like it's not really like quitting on their family or quitting on their kids or quitting on, it's not, it might be there, it might come through, you might need to get some wine, you might whatever, but quitting is generally just a passing thought. And so my mom and my grandma were both just powerhouses, not in, like what the world would say, not monetarily, not business wise, not connection wise, but those two women loved so deeply and so powerfully as to be able to guide my steps and to guide my formation and the decisions I made. I think we all come through our parents. We're not from them. We come through them. But there's some great things, and I think they taught me to love deeply, and how to take massive beatings in life and let them like rub off my shoulder. You can say whatever you want to about me online. I mean, I stood up for a lot of things during 2020 and all this other kind of stuff. I've been, we take on, killers when it comes to cartel and gang members and all the other kind of crap. I don't, I'm only going to die once and I know where I'm going. So I'm not, I don't carry no fear. But I think that my mom and my grandma just displayed that. My grandfather really showed me, in a world where my mom and my adopted father were not a good relationship, he showed me how a strong man can love his wife in my grandma. He was a giant. She's like 4'7". He was like 6'6". Like, but to see that, like with my own eyes, again, just to watch it happen was really great. Coaches, because I can't just say that there's one there. It's a progression of people, but coaches, Coach Charlie White was my wrestling coach from Rocky Ford, Colorado. Um, in a time where we couldn't afford anything, would pay for me to go to tournaments. My football coach, Coach Daryl Holt, my fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Ivy, as I said. There's been mentors. Tony Robbins has been one of them. Keith Cunningham, who's the Real Rich Dad and the Rich Dad Poor Dad books, has been a mentor for me. There's just people along the way that the list is so long, and it's like a never-ending list of angels that were put in my life directly from God to help order my steps so that I could become the best me that I can be. It's always a choice, right? We can always make the wrong decision. And by God, I have made the wrong decision so many times that it's embarrassing. But the idea is that you just make fewer and fewer mistakes as you age, I hope. But there's a list of them, brother, and those are them. But my mom and my grandma top the list for sure.
Yeah, no, it's so powerful. And the reason why I love that question is like you can just tell so much of those two things that you shared. And I love the story too, if I'm not mistaken. You named Anton J after your grandfather, right?
Yeah. Well, my great this was because I didn't know I was adopted, right? And so I found out my last name is actually Sisneros, and went back through my history, and my great grandfather was named Anton.
Yeah,
So yes.
that was such an incredible story. It's kind of like a way for you to kind of keep that lineage going. Where
It's
I want to,
starting with me. I mean, and it's starting with whoever's watching,
yeah.
right? My family story is not that great, and I want it to be great for my kids, and I want it to be great. I want the Cisneros name to mean something, and money is such a small portion of a name that's worthy of respect. It's such a small portion of it, right? Maybe it's some of it because, it shows that you've done some things and you're doing some things right, but it also might mean that you're a piece of crap. How much money you have, because there's lots of people out there that do wrong things and have the money, but a legacy and a last name that means something is about honor, and it's about doing what's right, and it's about risking, and it's about not really following the same path for popularity or fame or just chasing riches, right? I can legitimately be proud of the money that I have made in my life because it has helped other people make money. A business, let me leave this one for everybody. A business only exists for three things. Number one, to save somebody money. Number two, to make somebody money. Or number three, to radically, measurably improve the quality of their life. And I can say with all of my businesses that has been true and will continue to be true going into the future, because it's a principle of the Cisneros legacy, if that means anything.
No, yeah, it was so powerful, and I know that we're we're coming to an end. I just have two more points that I want to go next. So for me, intuition has kind of been my word theme and area of focus this year because it's like it's always been this superpower that I've had, but for so long I just didn't like listen to it. And I've been noticing this year when I listen to it 100% of the time, I usually avoid a lot of falls. Where I want to go next is you talked about you had a really interesting kind of spiritual journey, and I guess like my question is kind of that's where I'm heading on my journey. I've shared this before, but when I was younger I didn't really know it, but I was kind of like a part of a cult, and I think that a lot of people that you see who are like religious and you see how they act and you're just like, wait a minute, like this doesn't align. So for the longest time, like I've always kind of had I don't want to say like a negative connotation, but it wasn't my thing. Like I was always somebody who was helping and serving people, but I never really looked at it from that way. Yet the more that I dive into this intuition piece, a lot of people have said, intuition is essentially like, your higher power, your creator kind of like speaking to you. I'm curious for you, like what was it? Was there like a specific experience or something that kind of happened for you that really unlocked your spiritual journey? Because I remember you saying when you started doing this rescue work with certain ministries that the one thing that you said was, "Don't hit me with any of your Jesus stuff."
Word
And
for word. I said,
yeah,
don't come at me with any of your Jesus stuff. And it's a pastor and a ministry and, but that's where it was. So, but the journey for me, and I think it's the same for everybody. And, and again, I'm not one of those, I'm a new Christian. So I'm not, I haven't gotten to the place where I'm so smart that I actually want to push people away from the thing that I love, and I think that happens, right? You want to be smarter. And then the smarter you get, the more dogmatic you get. I hope I never become dogmatic. I believe that the words of the Bible, but again, I was raised healing during my healing time of being beat up. I had a Bible available for me. Right. And again, it wasn't attached to a church. It wasn't attached to a religion. It was simply something for me to read while I was healing. And I read it as a series of stories, right? Which helped me understand it. And then I became a Christian somewhere along the way. Then I lost everything. And those Christians and that church turned their back on me. They were fine when I was making a ton of money, right? They were fine. And again, this is what happened in my journey. And then when I actually needed help, oh, sorry, we don't have any time for you, right? We don't have any this or that. And so I became angry. I have always believed in God. I've always known two things are true. There is a God and I'm not him. Those are the two things that I know for sure. Okay. And so I've known that there's a God, but I was angry at the church, the mechanism by which they were delivering God to people. Okay. And that's where Pastor Rudy found me, and that's where, when I was rescuing these kids, I do things out of deep love. It didn't mean that I had to assign myself to a Christian or Muslim or, Jewish or what. It didn't mean that. It just meant that I wanted to love. And if I did that well enough, that whatever power was out there was probably going to reward me for doing good things as opposed to bad things. It's that simple. I'm not a complicated man, right? It was like, do more good things than you do bad things. And if there is a something to weigh those stones at the end of your life, I hope my good outweighs my bad. Simple. That was it. And it still remains that way, by the way, for me. But I watched the Bible kind of come alive when I was on these rescues with a very Christ-centered, Jesus-loving group of people. Okay. Um, and my decision, like, and you can't see the things that I've seen on these rescues where we should have been dead, where the kids should have been dead, where all kinds of things should have gone. We shouldn't have found them. We found them. We didn't end up dead. The kids didn't end up like so many things. It was miracle after miracle. And that's the only language that I had. This is not me trying to convert anybody. It's not me. It's just my language to say that was a miracle, because we couldn't have made that happen on our own. Right? We couldn't have. It had to be a higher power. And so I watched that happen over and over and over again. And that's where Pastor Rudy he didn't shove it down my throat. He didn't make anybody feel guilty. He didn't make me feel guilty. That was my relationship. And I said, that's the Jesus I thought I was reading about in the Bible, is the one that came like to die for everyone. Right? You talk about that empathy, right? Jesus died for everyone, not the good people, not the ones that sit in the front of the pew. I mean, not them, but not, excluding the prostitutes and excluding the pimps and excluding, like, you have to be here on Sunday and you have to sit and you have to dress and you have to do for them, right? But also for everybody. That is so big. It's so hard for me to comprehend. It's so big to say that, okay, now, the human brain goes on and goes, oh, so I could do anything. No. Oh, so the prisoner and the murderer and all, no, why are we so obsessed with everybody else's life? That's their relationship is with God and Jesus themselves. That's their relationship, not mine to interact in. And not, I'm sorry, I've gone on to preaching here. I'm not a preacher, but this is you asked the question is to say, it's so big, right? It's so overwhelming. And it wasn't to die for just some people. It was that he died for all of us. And then our time on this earth, right? Again, my simple mind, our time on this earth is to prepare for whatever that is that's next. And that is our free will. That's our choice. Do we live in hell? Do we create hell? Because most of the people that are in hell, and I'm not talking about the victims, most people that are in hell, it's a self-inflicted prison. And so that's what you get to experience on your way to, you will eventually get to experience heaven and, what's next. But why would you spend your time knowing that why would we spend our time making ourselves miserable? And so many people do, right? So many people do. And I'm not one of them. I live in joy and nobody gets to touch that joy.
I love exactly how this went, because it was like, it just goes back to this point that even though we're on LinkedIn, even though we're professionals, at the end of the day, we're like people, and people have so many different layers to them, right? And it's more than just the person that you see on social media. And I kind of knew that you were going that route, because where I was going to go next was talking about your incredible work that you've been doing with certain ministries. And I think it's one of the things that I always will say to people too. It's like, well, you can't expect to understand my perspective if you haven't had my experiences, right? So it's like, that was something that really resonated. I've just loved this conversation so much, because we've kind of like hit on everything, right? Like pretty much everything.
You've taken us around the windmill here.
Yeah, we've been on an incredible journey. And the last question that I want to ask you, and I know that because you're a deep person, I'm so excited for this answer. The reason why I started doing Impossible Equals Impossible is because it's my legacy project. Like, I don't monetize it. I don't care about any of the nonsense vanity that people do. I wanted to leave something behind, because I think that whether you're watching this now or on the replay, maybe you've had your impossible moment, or maybe it's coming up for you. But I wanted to leave people, so many different people from all walks of life, people who've achieved massive success, people who have kind of essentially overcome everything that there is to come, and give somebody like a blueprint to say, hey, if this person can do it, if you really want this bad enough, you can do that. My final question for the legend, Jason Sisneros, is, I have a mentor, and this past weekend was Father's Day, and he said something to me when he came on this show, and he's really been kind of like a father figure to me, because my dad was never a part of my life. And the question that he asked me that I always think about is, he says that at the end of the day, the only thing that's going to matter is that dash between the tombstone. And I want to know for you, what is that dash going to say about Jason Sisneros?
Nobody cares. Again, the only thing that we leave are the memories, the smiles, the tears, the life, how you impact somebody. And I really, I really do focus on that present. I'm not here. My phone probably has, I don't know how many messages. I'm not messing around. I'm with you. Right. And whoever's here, with us. And I like to give that presence wherever I'm at, because that's literally all we have is time. That is the only thing that we have. And what we do with it is the thing that is going to last for 2 generations, maybe, before you're completely forgotten and nobody knows about you. And we're moved on to whatever's next. But here on this earth, if you're lucky, your name is going to mean something to somebody for a couple of generations, 50 years, 100 years, maybe 150. Maybe if you do some really cool stuff and you serve, not that you had the biggest business, not that you had the most money, not that you all bought, but you served and you touched enough lives, maybe a couple 100 years. But then nobody's going to know who you are. Right? So why do we care so much about this moment, what people think, when they're not thinking about us? They're thinking about their own selves. Now, how I can help them is by listening and being able to impact their day, right? And to be able to lift them up, or to be able to be memorable in a world of bullshit, for not needing anything, not wanting it, just being present, right? It's the greatest gift that we have. And so my dash, brother, it consists of two things: adventure and joy. Those are the two things, and in that joy, I know that I have to be serving other people to truly feel joy, to truly experience it. And adventure is, it's a big ass world. And then there's some space out there. I'm going to experience as much of it as I can in my 200 years on this earth, because that's my goal.
That's awesome. Before we go, I know LinkedIn's been funky. I want to say thank you so much to some people who hopped up. I don't think I have to say this, but if any of you aren't connected or following Jason, I know a lot of you are entrepreneurs. He's definitely somebody that you want to learn from. Jackie, good to see you, my friend. And Dr. Marcia, good to see you. Who's here? Randy. Lindsay, my good friend, who helped Jason out with the Kmart thing.
Yes. I was a brain fart for a minute. So thank you.
Yeah. Michelle, so good to see you. And I see Noni and Margaret. Thank you all so much for hopping in. This has been such an incredible conversation, Jason. I always end this show. I'm about to hand it over to you to share any final thoughts, anything that you want to promote and share. I know you said that you have a book dropping in the fall, and if anybody wants to learn from an absolute genius, his company is called Anton J. I will definitely drop all that in the comments as well. But I want to thank you so much for your time. This has been such a fun conversation. I've learned so much about you, but I think more than anything, I've learned so much about life and perspective from this conversation. And I just want to say it was such a pleasure meeting you in Cancun, and tell Emily I said hello. And yeah, I'm going to hand it to you.
Yeah, I love you, brother, and I'm proud of you, and I love watching your journey. Oh, you're going to leave me on the screen completely by myself. I didn't get my hair done. I think there was something that I was trying to decide amongst the 6 things, and I want to leave. So, I want to close that loop for people for the other thing that you could be doing for your business. And that is, no matter what content you're putting out, make sure that you know the outcome for it. Right? There's really, social media is for 2 things. It's for, in business, it's only for 2 things: vanity, which pays you nothing, right? The likes, the follows, the attention, all that kind of stuff, that pays you 0. And the other thing is for you to create a lead, or and a sale for your product and or service. Those are the only two reasons. It's to create a lead that leads to a sale that helps you continue to build and fill your machine. And you should filter all of your content through that lens. Popularity, how, people, there is no, there is no equation, and you can go read. I know all of these gurus. I've been through their data. There is no equation that ties the amount of followers to success. Matter of fact, it's usually the opposite. Okay, because people are putting out great content. Now, if your job and your world is to create entertainment, then that's great. Followers and attention and shares and all that kind of stuff. But if you have a business that's selling a product and or service, just know that that is the reason why you're putting out social media content. And then the last thing that I would say is just know, I think that the world kind of needs to know these days that you're not alone. Social media, the media in general, the world, Republicans, Democrats, all this stuff that's going on is meant to separate rather than bring us together. And we all need to know each other, especially in the business world. We need to be doing business with each other. But you're not alone. I mean, that's the greatest message that I can give. It's the greatest message that I have received for myself, is that I know I'm not alone on this journey. And I've got friends that I've never met. I've got friends that are going to watch this that I know are now my friends. And we're going to meet somewhere, whether I'm speaking somewhere, just randomly, we're going to meet and hug. And it doesn't matter what color, what gender, none of that stuff matters. And I want people to know that. And then the greatest tool that you can offer this world is to ease suffering in somebody else. So that's it, my brother. That's all I got for wisdom this evening.
Oh my goodness, this has been such a fun conversation. And just to second your point, that is the reason why I loved LinkedIn, is that you don't need a ton of followers to create impact, right? And I feel like it should be about your experience and your expertise and the value that you're providing. And this is why I absolutely love LinkedIn. And Michelle, my good friend, so good to see you. No, this has been so fun. Jason, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to go back and watch this and take notes, because I've just been like, present with you and tuned in. But it's really been incredible getting to learn from you, getting to meet you, and yeah, just really grateful that our paths crossed, and we'll definitely be connected. This isn't the last time that you'll see me. So thank you.
Absolutely. Love you, brother.